a godly government with a godly tax law. People need governments. They cannot function without governing and without laws to manage their affairs. And a good government and a good laws protect the people. Hello and welcome to No Crown in Heaven for Bible Knowledge, studying Genesis verse by verse. We are in Genesis chapter 47, and we are going to talk about how Joseph governed the land of Egypt during the good years and the famine years and thereafter. Before we start the study, I want to remind you, after we finish Genesis, I will have a few videos, 2, 3, maybe 4, about Islam, having Christianity and Islam side by side. So if you're interested in learning that or knowing about Islam more and the differences, tune for that. Maybe if you are not subscribed, to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you know somebody interested in this topic, you can invite them. Or if you know a Muslim, you're more than welcome to invite him to watch this series. It's going to be mostly 3 videos or maybe 4. With that out of the way, let's go into the study. So we stopped when Joseph took Jacob, his father, set him before Pharaoh, and Joseph blessed Pharaoh, and Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" And Jacob's answer, we went over that. So now the whole family is settled in Goshen. Joseph has situated them. He appointed for them, gave them positions. So in verse 11 and 12, gave them positions, and he's providing food for them according to their numbers. And we're going to go now into verse 13. Now there was no bread in the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Now this is on the first appearance, appears to be taking advantage of the people. He's selling them the grain that they have produced, and then they run out of money. And then you read the rest of that chapter, and they come back to him and said, "We have no money, we're gonna die, give us food." And he's like, "Okay, sell me your livestock, and then sell me your land, and become slaves." And they will all become slaves of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh will own all the livestock, all the land, and people will like just have to work for Pharaoh at this point, basically. So it appears to be taking advantage of the people. So we have to look at this in more details and break it down, because what Joseph did was a godly system to govern the land and to tax the people. So in order to find that out, we need to go back to chapter 41. When Pharaoh had the dream and nobody could interpret the dream, they brought Joseph before Pharaoh. He interpreted the dream and he gave them advice how to deal with the situation, and then he was appointed by Pharaoh to be the one who would take care of the issue. So we go back to chapter 41 and we read what Joseph suggested for Pharaoh to do, and that's exactly what he actually did. So after he interpreted the dream and he told them, you have 7 years, good years, they're going to have plenty of food, and then there will be 7 years of famine. It's going to be severe famine. Verse 33, in chapter 41, verse 33, Joseph speaking to Pharaoh, now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. So that was suggestion or advice. Pharaoh took the advice and told Joseph, you're going to be the one who's going to do this. So he's doing this. So let's break this down. There is 7 good years coming. So we're going to have plenty of food, more than enough. So we're going to store that so we can survive the 7 bad years, 7 famine years. So he was saying, we're going to tax the people 20%. Take 1/5 of the produce and store it in the cities. And we'll use that 1/5 to feed the people in the famine years. So how 1/5 of the whole year produce will be enough for a whole year, like 7 years and 7 years. You take 1/5, so 1/5 of 1 year should cover a whole year. Or 1/5 of the crops on this year should should feed the whole nation for 1 year in the famine. So let's move down more. In chapter 41, verse 47, now in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food for the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. So that's what Joseph did. was that only 1/5 of the produce? So if 1/5 of the produce and the crops was that much for these plentiful years, where is the 4/5, 80% of the crops? Did they eat all that in 1 year, if that was enough? Because obviously when the famine came, he didn't only feed the whole land of Egypt, but people were coming from surrounding area like Canaan and like Joseph's brothers. They were coming to buy food, and he was selling them. If he didn't have enough, he would say, no, we barely have enough for our people, so we're not selling to strangers. But there was plenty. He stopped counting because immeasurable. So one of two things had happened, options. The land produced abundantly without measure. That was so much to the point that 1/5 of the food that was produced was plenty for that much. So if that was the case, what happened to the other part, the 80% that still with the people? That's one possibility. The other possibility, that Joseph taxed the people 20% and bought the extra that they are not using to add to the storage. That's one part. The other part is very possible that because they have plenty of the first year, so they had more seeds, so in the second year they planted more and they harvest more, and the third year they have more seeds and they planted, so it was compiled. But the fact that he didn't only take 1/5 of their produce, he took 1/5 as taxes, but he gathered more to become immeasurable. So either he paid the people money to buy more than what was taxed, or the people kept what's left and they should have stored it for themselves. But obviously as soon as the famine came, they didn't have any food. So did they eat all that? No, they didn't. It is obvious to me that he taxed them 20% and he purchased from the people the extra grain and food and produce that they produced, but it was more than what they needed, to the point that he gathered, as in verse 48 in chapter 41 it says, he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food for the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered much grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. That's most likely what happened. So one of two things happened. Either they kept all the grain, so where did all this grain went? When they have it more abundant that extremely, like if it's 1/5 covers become immeasurable and he stopped counting, then what happened to the rest? But if he bought the rest from them, what happened to the money? Because in the first year they ran out of money. So now let's go to chapter 47 and see what happened. They ran out of money. And they came to him and he's like, we're gonna die, so sell me your livestock for food. Well, either he bought that food from them or the 1/5 was plenty enough. But we came to the conclusion he bought the food from them. So they have the money. So what happened to the money? He probably went and bought expensive cars, a Ferrari or a Mercedes or whatever. They probably remodeled their kitchen or went on vacation to Paris. That's what we do when we have extra money, right? They didn't save the money. They spent it. Whatever they spend it on in that time and this culture, they spend the money. Because if he bought that food from them, taxed them only 20%, and bought everything extra, they should have saved that money knowing that the famine is coming. They didn't expect that he would buy that from them and then give it back to them for free. That would be entitlement. So they wasted their money. So when the famine came, they ran out of money. And then he got their livestock, their land, and even themselves became slaves to Pharaoh. So that is up to that point. What happened after the famine ended, we're going to find out. But before we go to that part of time after the famine ended, we have to think of a few things here. God is the one who gave the dream to Pharaoh. God is the one who gave the interpretation to Joseph. And God is the one who gave the wisdom to Joseph how to deal with this coming famine. God is the one who brought how much grain and produce the land will bring in the 7 years, knowing how much they need for the 7 famine years. God orchestrated the whole thing. And Joseph acted with the wisdom that's given him by God, trusting that what he's planning to do is going to work out. So now let's go to what happened after the famine ended. You read the rest of chapter 47 when they go and he will sell them grain for their livestock and for their land and for their own themselves to become slaves. Let's go to verse 23. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. So the priest situation, if you have read the passage, that the priests originally, before the good years or famine years, they had a provision from Pharaoh himself to provide them with the food. So that did not change, so they never lacked, so they never needed to sell their livestock or their land or anything for food, because it was already provided by Pharaoh. It was a custom. So he did not buy the lands from the priests of the Egyptian gods. But he told them, "Here is seeds." So now the famine has ended. They're gonna sow the seeds, and they're gonna have crops, and life will be back to normal. So now Pharaoh owns your livestock and owns your land. Here is seeds. Sow the land, keep 80% of the crops to feed your livestock, to feed yourself, and to plant for the following year, and give 1/5 to Pharaoh as taxes. And it says that Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day, meaning until the day that this was written by Moses. So that's obviously probably 400 years after. Let's say that Joseph was so kind that he gave all that food to the people for free. What would have happened here? They would have become lazy, entitled, and they will demand a solution after the famine ended. They have not been responsible from the beginning to either save the money for the famine years to be able to buy this food back, and they have wasted this money. So that brings the government, the godly government that looks after the people, it looks ahead. And that's what Joseph was doing. He was a godly governor. He was a governor over the whole land of Egypt. He looked ahead, and planned that, okay, now the famine ended, we still have grain here, or here is seeds from the good years. You can plant your fields now. And the people went back to normal, and it became a law to give 1/5 to Pharaoh. Now, that makes it put the obligation, and they are owned by Pharaoh, so they have the obligation to give him 1/5 of the produce. If they become lazy, they're not going to eat. They're not going to feed their livestock, and they're not going to be able to pay their taxes or give 1/5 to Pharaoh. You know, going to be, we gave you the seed to plant your field. Why didn't plant it? Like as Jesus did, he gave one person 10 talents, 5 talents, and 1 talent, and then what did you do with what I have given you? So it's the same concept. You went and invested and brought 10 more. Well done, good and faithful servant. But if you wasted, the one you have will be taken from you. So this was a godly governor with godly law, posing taxes on the people for the benefit of the people. Now, this applies to us as wherever you live, in the country you live in. The government should be working for the benefit of the people, and the local government should be working for the benefit of the local in their area. And the head of the household should be working for the benefit of his household. Same way. Governing and responsibility for the governor and responsibility from the governed to abide with the law of the land and be a good citizen. Head of household, make the rules for the house, the responsibility of the members of the household who live under his roof or her roof should abide with this rule of the house and be a good citizen of it. This is a godly system. Each country needs a government and a law. If there isn't, the chaos and crime will increase. Whoever is stronger will take advantage of the weaker and all that. So even with the children of Israel, when they After the Exodus and they became a nation, even still in the wilderness, God gave them a governing law in Leviticus. The book of Leviticus is the law that govern relationship, that govern illnesses, that govern transactions. All that is in the book of Leviticus. It's instructed how to deal with each situation, because God knew when the people are in mass numbers and they're gonna live together, they need to be governed. And government is for the benefit of the people. We cannot live without government. Now, the rest of chapter 47, start from verses 27. I'm going to read the passage and we're going to talk about it briefly. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now, if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And he said, "I will do as you have said." Then he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. So this is Joseph, obviously later on in years after, because they came on the second year of the famine and he lived 17 years. So this is way after the famine ended, this happened. I call this the first Exodus. The first Exodus. Verse 29, Jacob speaking, or Israel speaking, "Now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." This is the first Exodus. Israel knew that they're gonna go back. He knew this was a test. And he knew God promised this land and they're gonna go back to this land, the promised land. So that's the end of chapter 47. We're going to continue next time in chapter 48. Please subscribe and like and share, and God bless you.